This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
What's up, Twitter of Time and all Wheel of Time fans? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friends, Jake and Josh, on with me. And we're just talking about Wheel of Time. The TV series was canceled earlier this week. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be about a week old of news. So not really breaking news, but just kind of wanted to dive into like our thoughts on the show, what went wrong, what went right, any hope for the future, any like larger signaling this means for epic fantasy and other stuff. Just, this is notable news for the community, and what do we make of it?
Disappointed, man. I'm disappointed. I can't say I'm that surprised after it didn't get like immediately renewed. I my hopes went down drastically, because I
Mm.
would have thought that they would have announced like kind of after the premiere of the last episode that it was renewed if they were going to renew it, just to like capitalize, try and get people excited to watch. So I can't say I'm super surprised, but I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I knew there was that delay. I'd interpreted that as Sony and Amazon just figuring out their rights renewal, which it seems like that did play into it, but I just assumed it was like with the Spider-Man stuff, like they're going to do it. They just need to make an agreement. So I
Mm.
was I was shocked when no agreement was made and it was canceled.
Do you think with that uh, kind of drama, do you think that that means that there is hope for another network to pick it up, to be the distributor of it, or do you think that it's just
You're you're
that's a
interpreting
fool's hope?
you're interpreting the delay as like some behind the scenes
Well, if like
something.
say Sony, if Sony still really believes in the project or something, and then they could go out
Yeah.
and shop it around to other networks to be the distributor for it.
Yeah, my understanding was, or I guess my understanding of the current situation is Sony was like, "Hey, let's renew," and either they asked for more money, or what I guess at the end of the day, the way I'm understanding is that they wanted more money than Amazon was willing to put out for the rights to keep the show going and to stream on their service. So that's why it was canceled. Sony did post something like 2 hours after the cancellation notice or something that same day that made it almost seem like a trailer for the series. And some people were saying that that was like a them trying to do a send off. Other people were saying that's Sony trying to say like, "Hey, we still believe in this." If that's the case, I think the most
Hmm.
hopeful look at it is like, yeah, if Sony's still on board, they just need to find someone else who wants to foot the bill. And so I think there's a better chance than none. Like, I think there's a slight chance, but I don't know who's going to want to do it. We could have like if we did, that's kind of like what happened with The Expanse, right? It was canceled and then picked up.
Yeah.
So
Picked up by, ironically, Prime Video.
yeah. So
But
I don't know.
so do we know for sure like the linchpin to this whole cancellation all came down to the rights, not to Amazon looking at the show as like this is really expensive and not enough people are watching it. It came down to the cost of the rights, or just it all factored
Well,
in.
I think it I think the show being too expensive definitely factored in, but I think that includes like the rights and then also wasn't Amazon footing the bill for production as well? Like Sony wasn't doing that from my understanding. So I think it was to do this going forward, like this is how much it's costing us and then I don't really understand like the I mean this is all hearsay from Reddit posts of people that I have not verified at all, but this is what I've heard
Hmm.
talked in the Reddit circles. That yeah, that's the gist I got from it. I don't know if Amazon didn't think it got enough viewership because it got decent viewership, like pretty solid viewership um for a streaming show recently, but
Well, that's kind of the unknown. We don't really know what the viewership numbers actually are. Like they're not just publicly
I
out
yeah,
I
there.
think just what
but
people can see based on like where it places in
yeah.
the Amazon's like top five, top 10 or whatever.
And whatever that like there's like certain metrics that are out there of like, oh, this is like the fourth watched show, and this like people are doing that for like looking at this as the fourth watch show at this time period and stuff like that. I don't remember the exact
Yeah, I think
thing
though
that was used for that.
I think now that streaming is bigger, I think that those seem to me, and Stephen obviously can talk more about this than we can, but it seems like that is kind of guesswork a little bit on like if you're aggregating across like streaming services and stuff. It seems like
Yeah,
I don't put a whole lot of credence into that anymore, just because the
it's all
streaming
we have
services.
though. Like,
Mm.
I think the best way to do it from our perspective, obviously the streamers are going to have a different perspective because they actually know the numbers, but is to just look at it as compared to other shows on the service. You know, how long did it stay in the top 10 on the service? How long did it stay in the top five? Was it ever
yeah.
number one? I think that that's probably going to give us the best idea that we're going to get, you know,
Do you know how it performed according to that?
I think it did well. I think it was kind of like Reacher. Like, I think it performed similarly to Reacher, which is one of the higher performing shows on
I
Amazon.
thought Reacher was their top show.
Yeah. So I think it was like right behind Reacher. Um,
Mm.
but
If
the
I mean, if that's true, that seems like
that's the thing is I think
I would be
that's
surprised, honestly, if that was true. Because Reacher
yeah,
Reacher is
do
their
a quick
top
fact
show.
check.
I mean, so the thing about this is Amazon knows the numbers,
Yeah.
but they don't necessarily tell us what those numbers are. And then there's companies like Nielsen, the company I work for, that tries to get a big look at, the population of people out there in the world and cross that with a bunch of data sources and try to figure out how many people are actually watching. And there's different ways of doing this. But anyway, like the guesswork that you mentioned, I mean, sure, but these are good methods. So the stuff that actually exists that aggregates these numbers and puts together, X minutes watched or
I think
of
Nielsen is what I
whatever it
was
is.
referring to.
Yeah, so Nielsen is kind of the dinosaur, and we'll see if my company can work its way in there, getting more
You're
impressive.
the birds.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, the point is, I don't know that, like, I haven't seen it. Maybe I've missed this, but and let us know, like, viewers, if you can point us to actual numbers that Nielsen or any other company has posted showing the number of minutes watched. I think that would be interesting because then you could put together a little bit of analysis. Wheel of Time has watched this many minutes compared to something like
So
Rings of Power
I did get that.
or
This is AI, like the Google's AI summary, but it says Reacher got 5.76 billion minutes, while Wheel of Time season one had 4.9 billion minutes. So uh, Reacher was, did
hmm.
outperform by, you know,
Is there a source
5.76
for
compared
that?
to.
I don't know if we want
Yeah,
to directly
yeah,
build
that's what I'm.
any, yeah, just off of
Yeah, this is just
immediate
the
AI
Google's AI thing,
search.
but
Yeah.
that's just. I think that, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think that
guess
those are season one. Like the
at the end of the day,
comparison.
like the metrics that are available, like you said, Amazon knows the exact amount watched, and they know how it compares to their other shows. And their streaming is interesting that you're trying to not just get people to watch the show, but you want people to want to keep or gain your service to watch the show. Like
Hmm.
that's the overall end goal. And so the other things that we can see as consumers to compare against, and like what Amazon can see to compare against shows outside their network, from what I saw, showed a solid performance, not groundbreaking, not breaking any records. It wasn't number one, but it was in the top five from what I saw, like consistently, which in my mind isn't the reason you cancel a show. But I mean, I don't know what's
Hmm.
going on in the background besides my little Reddit rumors.
I
Yeah.
mean, obviously you weigh that metric, whatever it is, and we can talk on about that, but at the end of the day, we don't know for sure. You weigh that against whatever it costs, which they obviously
Mhm.
also know. And ultimately, I mean, they came to the decision that it was not making enough money and they pulled the plug. I mean, I feel
So
like
yeah.
I
it's
haven't
probably
verified
as
this.
straightforward as that.
I haven't verified this, but I also heard they sold the rights to Rings of
Oh,
Power.
did they?
So they're syndicating shows now, like stuff
Oh,
like Rings of
Oh,
Power.
okay.
And what's the one with one of the Stark kids and um, Citadel,
Oh, Citadel.
with Rob Stark, right? So stuff like that. I saw an article for whatever reason Citadel was mentioned.
Okay.
But yeah, they're going to be syndicating
So they're going
their
like in
shows.
reverse. So it used to be that
Yeah,
streamer like
streaming was the
Netflix would pick up,
syndication.
yeah, Netflix would pick up buy rights from like, for Friends
Okay.
or The Office or whatever from NBC, and now it's that's
Uh,
interesting.
So you wouldn't view that Rings of Power syndication as a them like washing the hands of anything associated with Rings of Power, right?
It
they're
to
still
me
Okay.
making season 3 of Rings of Power.
to me it
I
does
think
seem like they're losing a little bit of faith in it though, because they're looking for other ways to generate revenue from it at the
this is
very
definitely a
least.
signal that they are losing faith in big budget
Fantasy
fantasy
series.
shows, and Rings
Yeah.
of Power is the biggest budget fantasy
Like
show,
I could not
and it's
see
been really mid.
Caveat.
I could
Yeah.
not see Netflix doing that with with Stranger Things. You know what I mean? I could or
Yeah.
Syndicating?
I mean,
anytime soon. Maybe after the whole series is done later this summer, maybe. But
Mm.
I don't know. Could you?
doesn't that okay? My understanding of syndication just means like traditionally that meant okay, we're getting reruns now, right? Like this is playing
And so
on
and to other networks too, right?
to yeah, and to other networks. Um, why would you want to do that as a streaming service?
Well, because
Like
you get to sell the rights to syndicate it. So
Yeah, to
if
make
so
more
so
money.
so the giving up is I'm not convinced this product is going to get people to buy our service. So let's get whatever amount of money we
Yeah.
can get. Okay.
And Prime is interesting because unlike other streamers, buying Prime is, I mean, some people just buy it in order to get free shipping on stuff, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I also get video." And so that's got to be kind of tricky to untangle those two things.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's a signal that they think the Prime brand alone is like strong enough where we can syndicate shows and people are still going to renew. Which honestly makes me think that like why don't they separate Prime from Prime Video and like have a
it
separate
is,
subscription?
you can
Can
cancel your
you?
Prime
You
Video, and I think it saves you a little bit of money on
oh,
your
does
Prime
it?
subscription.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not
I
aware
know
of
you
that.
can pay for
I'm
a
just
premium
foolishly
version of
renewing
you can pay
without
for a
ads.
premium version of Prime Video without ads,
Hmm.
which
Um,
I'm not paying for that.
I'm not
I
either.
don't know if you can drop it completely.
So I know you used to
Hmm.
be able to. I did want to talk about the other end of the other side of the coin. We talked about the cost, or we talked about the revenue versus the cost. And Ben and I were talking today about how it's just like I don't think like it's kind of frustrating that these epic TV shows are like requiring such a high budget, or they're throwing such a high budget towards them, because I feel like you could get a good TV show. Like I would rather have a TV show that makes it through the whole story, and cost half as much or even less to make, you know?
Yeah,
And
that's an interesting.
like I just don't think that you need I just don't think you need that as much money as was poured into this. Like I think obviously if you're going to do the whole thing and you have the ability to pour tons of money into it, great. But like I would rather have, the whole like a TV show on the level of like The
Hmm.
Magicians. Did you guys watch that?
No.
Uh, okay. I don't know. I'm trying to think of another. I'm trying to think of another show that like you could definitely like that had a bunch of fantastical elements, and you could definitely see where they cut corners, but
Maybe
got
like
like
Shadow and Bone, which was
yeah,
killed after 2 seasons by Netflix.
yeah, maybe like Shadow and Bone.
Didn't seem to have a
I don't
crazy budget
know.
to me.
But
D disentangling this from the Wheel of Time, like if I think of another fantasy
or
series of mine that
even
I
well,
really
wait, sorry,
like,
even like The Expanse. Like you could tell that The Expanse, the budget wasn't as high as Wheel of Time, but it was good enough, and it was able to get through most of the story even before it was canceled.
I will say from the season I saw of The Expanse, it felt similar quality of budget um as Wheel of Time. So I don't know, knowing the budget is less, I don't know what that means, like how
Hmm.
they just were able to leverage less better, or if the effects needed didn't require as much of a budget. But disentangling it from existing IPs, I like taking that principle of just I'd rather have a full season um bare bone or full story bare bones than half a story, let's say at like Game of Thrones peak of production value. Like if I think about something
Even like early,
like First Law or Stormlight, like I don't know. I think I'd rather wait until they could do the full budget the whole way through rather than getting like
And
what's the point of an
mm,
adaptation that
so
is really low budget when I can just read the book, and I'd rather
because
just keep reading the book until it is possible to
I
get
don't
that.
know. Because I think that it's perfectly fine to see something that's not, fully, as good as it can be in another format. I don't think you need it
I'm just
all.
saying for my interest, I wouldn't be interested in that. Like I would be like, this isn't living up to my expectations, so I'd rather just read the book.
honestly, from what we saw of Wheel of Time, I don't like one of the criticisms was the sets don't look awesome. It looks like it's a little too clean. Like obviously they spent money in a lot of places, but it also looked kind of cheap at times. Like it didn't look amazing. It didn't look like they poured hundreds of millions into it or anything. And I don't remember what the budget numbers are. And if sorry, listeners, but my sense of it was like a, bigger, obviously a bigger budget than regular, but not nearly as big as something like Rings of Power. I just can't think of where they could have cut any budget and still had to be like any budget that I'm thinking, like anything that was lesser, I feel like would negatively impact the story a lot because it was kind of already like at, I don't know,
I
mid-level
don't know.
for
Okay,
me.
so
I would not want to cut it
the
anymore.
the reports are saying, and again, fact check all this. This is just Googling off the top. The reports are saying that the first two seasons of Wheel of Time cost 260 million. So that's like, and then I looked at the expense. They were $2 to $5 million per episode. So you're looking at, like
Per
a,
episode, and they had like 10 episodes.
yeah. So
So
you're looking at
like
$40
half,
million for two seasons. No, like
yeah,
40 million versus 260 million. Like I don't know.
Hmm.
That's a pretty big difference, right? Like a quarter of a billion
yeah.
dollars versus $20 million.
But back to Steven's point, it did feel like the difference doesn't feel
I know,
as
but
large.
I
So
mean,
like
but for
where
the
would you cut
expense,
where would you
for the
cut the
expanse, it's like so many sets that are just like in the spaceship and they're kind of doing stuff and you throw in some effects. Like Wheel of Time, they've got to be in all these different places. They need new sets, they need new costumes.
so
Like
many people?
the story required all of these
Yeah.
things.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I think that they could have. I just don't know if they needed to go as all out as they did in some ways. And let me just say, so pulling back a little bit, I agree that it would. I'm like this is like quarterbacking whatever, like Monday night quarterback or whatever. Like I don't know exactly how they could have done it, but I do feel
Armchair
like
quarterback is the term.
armchair
Yes.
quarterback. Monday
Monday,
Monday
I
love
love
it.
Monday
I
morning
love
quarterback. Monday morning
Monday
quarterback is a thing, right?
Monday night quarterback.
Monday morning. Okay, whatever.
I'm laughing because I have no like that could have been a real phrase and I
I
would
think
not have
Monday
known
morning.
it.
Whatever. Okay.
I'm no help
Let's
here.
let's score a football goal here.
Okay. I feel like there's a time between like 2020 to like 2023, maybe even 2019, where it's like the price tag was seen as like kind of like a pitch, like, oh, this now has the biggest budget for any fantasy show. Or like I think that they did that with like Rings of Power. They were doing that with like Marvel movies. I feel like that was meant to like
Is
drum
a
up excitement
is a
for
Well, yeah,
pitch
it's a
to people
marketing
like
ploy.
but
Yeah, it's
it's
a
watch
marketing
this.
ploy
It's
for
amazing. We
sure.
put a lot of money into it. Watch
Yeah,
yeah,
it.
but we
Yeah.
know more money doesn't equal better. Like that doesn't
right. That's what I
More
mean.
always
But
money,
what
I
you
feel
more
like they
want.
were I
problems.
feel like they were burning money when they didn't absolutely need to. Like
Could be, but to Steven's point, if all we have to go off of is 250 million equals that quality of two seasons, like where are
But
we cutting?
that's my point is that we can see in other shows that like had a third of the budget and produced a better quality product.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I just
I'll agree there. Yeah.
I think that they didn't need to do it. And
I
like
will
I think
say that I don't know to what extent or whatever, but COVID was really expensive.
right, COVID was really expensive. Yeah, and
That was just
inflation.
season one though, right? That was just end of season one that affected it.
I
Because
think
season two
into
started rolling out after
did
vaccines were rolled out.
they got out of any filming restrictions in season two?
I thought so.
So
Hmm.
here's my overall point.
Maybe not.
Like we said, we talked about the early season of Game of Thrones. Those episodes were a lot cheaper. You could definitely tell sometimes, but
Yeah.
like they would use like a painted canvas sometimes for like the background that like looked really good for like the background of like a city, like a Nessos or whatever. Like you could definitely tell where they took shortcuts, but it still like looked really good. And it was still an expensive show. I just mean that if we want to see like epic fantasies brought to life, I don't think that a quarter million or $250 million is gonna be like that's never gonna make its money back. I don't think.
Well,
So
you're talking 2 seasons.
early seasons Game of Thrones, there was a lot of just kind of conversations in different places, right? And then there were a handful of bigger set pieces, like obviously, Battle of Blackwater was a
Right.
massive
Right. They
cost,
would
whatever,
they
But then I remember in season two, I want to say, and I don't remember what the battle was. They just skipped over some battles, and you saw the aftermath of a bunch of bodies lying around, and they're kind of walking through the field,
so,
stuff like that. So I
Like
guess
when Tyrion was knocked out.
yeah.
Like,
I'm fine. So
so. The
I'm
thing
fine
is,
with
a
that.
Wheel of Time is not. I don't know if it would have been nearly as compelling of a show because it is like at its heart an adventure story. And in the first book, they are just traveling. They're not sitting around in different sets talking. They're on the run. It's
and
just so
there's
much more of like an active adventure story.
Yeah, but
and
you
there's
don't have
more
to build a
supernatural stuff happening from the get-go in Wheel of
That's
Time
true.
compared
That's
to
true.
Yeah.
Game
The
of Thrones.
More
weaves are hard, but you don't have to
more
build
more
set.
magic than right.
Steven,
Yep.
my point is you don't have to build sets for all that stuff. You can why not go film in like an old tavern or like Game of Thrones did film in existing castles. Like, that's
Yeah,
going to save you a lot of money.
I think at the end of the day, Steven and I both agree money like there's a high likelihood the money that was spent could have been spent more efficiently looking at other adaptations. But if we're talking just lower quality production, I'm not really sure I'd want to see the
So
quality drop
what?
any
Okay,
further.
what about this? What about this, Jake? What if results in arguably a 10 to 15% drop in quality, but it costs like a third as much?
I mean, I mean, I
No,
don't know.
oh, sorry,
What
not
what
a
if,
third.
what if it was
Like
what
like
if it
a
was a 20%
no
quality, but it
no
saved half as much?
no. I know,
What if
but
it
so
like
my
what
my point.
I'm not going
Okay,
to go through
if it
every
I
intersection on the
obviously okay.
graph.
I was trying. Okay,
Where
yes,
is
I
the
know that.
point, Jake? Where
I
is
know
the point?
where's
I don't know.
the
Show
optimal
me the
function.
charts.
Of course, there's going to be like obviously if we knew like the optimal like the
Uh,
derivative of the function or whatever
is
like
this
where
going to turn into the hot crazy graph?
but like I think that there's like a potential where like you spend a little bit less money, the quality goes down by 10%, or you spend a lot less money and the quality goes down by 10%, but that makes it a lot more likely to get the full story.
I
So like
And
guess.
maybe the
in
I
quality
my
of
mean,
each individual episode goes down a little bit, but like the likelihood of getting
yeah,
a
I
better
don't
work as
I
a
don't
whole goes way up.
I
That's
don't
my point.
prioritize an adaptation for adaptation's sake. And so it would have to meet a threshold of quality at all. And then obviously if it meets that threshold, I'd rather it completed than not.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. I yeah. Another
I mean,
example.
I was arguing before season 3. I was like, I don't even know if
I know.
I'm
Yeah,
happy this adaptation exists.
I know. Another show I was watching. I've been watching Black Sails, and that's 5 million an episode, and it looks pretty good. And but there's not as many sets and stuff.
It
But
depends on what they're
yeah, a
doing too.
lot.
Like
I mean,
money.
a lot of these shows just reuse the same sets over and over again.
right, well they're out, but they're also out on ships, and there's big battles on ships, and like I don't know, there's some pretty
Yeah,
impressive filming that goes on to me.
but Wheel of Time, I mean, they tried to reuse stuff. Like they built their tower set, and I think they reused that quite a bit.
The tower set was great.
They built
Yeah,
the ways. They tried to use as much. I don't know. It's hard to say where it could
it's
have been
hard. Yeah,
better, and we just don't really
Yeah, I
know.
mean, I
But
think we're talking about how we feel about it canceling. I don't think we need to solve
yeah. Sorry, we
the
don't know.
yeah,
the why,
but I
but
guess this kind of gets to the point of like, where did things go wrong? And a major challenge of the show was just like the nature of the source material. Like I said, it's an adventure book. There's so many places, there's so many characters. They really wanted to have distinctive looks for all of the different nations and stuff, which is required in order to be, true to the source material. There's just so many things that like, ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. And it's also a challenging thing to turn into television that anyone is going to tune into because it's this like vast world, the story is complex. How do we turn this into something? So there were writing
Yeah.
challenges like from the get-go, just with
Yeah, we haven't
at
even talked
with
about like the creative
yeah,
challenges and
with
stuff.
adapting. Yes, so there's all these creative challenges with along with that, the creative challenges and the money challenges go together because there are constraints over what we want to do creatively because everything costs, right? So they're balancing all these things. I just think it was a super difficult and ambitious adaptation.
Yeah.
And you know, at the end of the day, like the result was mid to be nice on the first two seasons, and I thought it was like pretty good for the third season. And that wasn't enough. I think to just kind of continue my like general thoughts, I think the low quality of the first season and bad reviews, they never recovered from that. Like and then it took so long for season two to come out, challenges with COVID, etc. Um, they didn't pour the same marketing in for seasons two and three. And so it just never generated this excitement where Wheel of Time became this household thing like Game of Thrones. It was always this like fantasy show that wasn't very good to start off with. And like, oh yeah, my friend told me now it's getting good, but do I still want to watch it? Anyway, it just never recovered from
Yeah.
that. And at the end of the day, yeah, it couldn't make it.
Yeah, I think my overall take is I've seen a lot of people who are like uh show haters basically say like I've seen a memes go around where it's like a cast photo and it's like thank you for giving your best, thank you for giving your best to everyone, and then Rafe they're like I hate you, like I hope you never work in TV again. And I don't really see
Uh,
it as a Rafe problem. I think from my taste, I think Rafe was doesn't write the type of quality I would like in the show. But when it comes to the overall issues this show had, I think it was mostly due to like Amazon being too involved and not letting somebody create art. I really thought all the actors did an amazing job. And my sense of it is Rafe tried to do the best he could with all the interference he was getting. And yeah, which is unfortunate. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think for me, averaging all the seasons together, it ended up being a mid show for me. I am bummed that like it ended on such a high note, like it like was able to finally find its like
mhm.
better voice in season three, and then season three ends on a cliffhanger. I mean, not like a cliffhanger, but like it's definitely not finished. And then unfortunately, this
Yeah.
is how it ends. But
If seasons one and two were same quality as season three, do you think we keep on going with the show?
I don't know because I
No.
mean,
You still don't think even if seasons one and two were as good, you don't think it'd be renewed?
I don't think so.
I
Really? I think you do. I think it does get renewed.
I think if it was that strong from the beginning, we would see a different response from the public. I don't know if it'd been strong enough.
Yeah, I mean,
It's really hard to
obviously,
know.
yeah, obviously, if it becomes a household, if it's so good that becomes a household name, I
I guess
think
that's would it have if
I
seasons one and two were that good, as good as season three?
maybe I just don't think so though. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
yeah, the
Well,
best of
I
if
season
you're
three was still not what I would want out of it.
if you're
that's not
saying that,
that's not about that's not a knock on the quality of the show. It's just I think that again, looking how much it costs, I don't see any way. Like I think it's more of like a macroeconomic lens where money isn't as cheap as it was in 2020. You know, like you can't go out and borrow $250 million at this like at a 2%
Money's
or
cheaper
basic.
now.
No,
Have you heard of inflation?
okay.
Money's a lot cheaper now,
So,
man.
so I
yeah.
guess that's what I'm saying, Stephen, is that I think that there is a lot more, like, I think that it's a lot more expensive to borrow. That 250 million, $250 million is not like that, that just across the board, companies aren't making that investment anymore in these TV shows. And I think that even if it would have had a great quality first and second season, like season three, I don't think if it's enough to overcome like those bigger trends.
So if you guys are saying that, then you're saying there was never any chance
No,
for
well,
this show.
If
no,
if quality is what got the show canceled, then yeah, I think the quality would have had to been a lot better.
I don't, but that's my point. I don't think quality is what got the show canceled. I think it's,
I don't think
I
so
think it's
either.
big. I think it's much bigger
Mm.
trends in the industry than,
Well, I think there's legs to that argument because we haven't even talked about this, but if you look at the critic scores and the ratings for the show, even though we've all said seasons 1 and 2 were kind of mid, we didn't really like them very
Yeah.
much. Jake really actively dislikes them. Even seasons 1 and 2 were like decent scores, and then season 3 was very good.
Yeah.
And so
Which
I
is
I think
why,
yeah,
yeah.
there's some argument. I think there's some legs to that to say that look, we saw good quality and yet it's still canceled.
Yeah, I think it would have had to have been a household name from the beginning, and that it being a household name needed to have driven people into Amazon's ecosystem, which I don't know
yeah.
if it would have, especially like thinking about like you're saying it's so
Mm.
tied to Amazon Prime as a service. Like, are they just kind of saturated? So like this TV shows can't do that, with
Well,
but
and kind of look at the biggest shows on the streamers right now, like Severance, much smaller scale. I think that they do spend a lot of money on Severance, but again, much smaller
Yeah,
scale.
they spent like a crazy high amount of money on Severance, which I don't understand.
I
But
I don't quite
yeah.
either, but that
writers that good aren't cheap.
yeah. Well, I think that it's anyway, but like they could pull back a lot on a lot of funding on Severance and like be able to produce it for cheaper, I think,
They spent a ton of money on the Ortbo
Yeah,
and the
on the
marching
Orpo.
and the marching band.
Thanks,
And
Lumen.
like maybe all those fancy cameras to do those running through the hall
Yeah,
scenes, and I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's anyway, but like that's just one example of like a show that's smaller scale. Like even like The Penguin on HBO. Like I know that they have their House of the Dragon play, but that's they're not putting that out very fast either. Night of the Seven Kingdoms is pushed back. I doubt that we're gonna get House of the Dragon season 3 next year too. Like maybe fingers crossed we will, but I kind of doubt
I
it.
think we will next year.
You think we're getting Night of Seven Kingdoms and House of the Dragon season 3 both in the same year?
Maybe by the end of the year,
Um,
because Seven
I think
Night of
so.
Seven Kingdoms is beginning of the
Early
year.
next year? Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess. But like you
So are you saying that it's all about IP? Like the quality is not nearly as important as the
not
IP?
even IP. No, I was
And Wheel of Time is not already a recognizable IP. So
no
therefore
not
it's just, and I guess well, to take that back, maybe what you're saying is even though it's quality, we're just not getting people to watch it. So the ratings are good, but at the end of the day, there's not enough eyeballs.
yeah, and my whole point was that it's not even the IP because like Severance doesn't have any existing IP, but like
Yeah.
it's just I think that they're pulling back and like if you look at HBO, like they put out the Penguin was the big prestige show of 2024, and that's a much smaller scale show, and I think that they are kind of pulling back the excesses,
You're
like
you're
kind of
driving on and like quarter billion for 2 seasons is just too much
it's just
nowadays.
too it's just not sustainable. I think that they're going to pull
Might
back
be,
and make really well done shows that aren't as big in scale.
yeah.
Is I think what we're
Mm.
going to see.
So you don't think there's a chance, or you think the chances of them being picked up are lower than?
Maybe I don't know. I think maybe Sony can be like, hey, we already have all the sets built. We already have contracts negotiated with actors. Like we have a
That
pretty loyal
is
fan
that
base.
is true. It seems
Maybe
like
Yeah.
some upfront costs there
yeah,
are
maybe
already
maybe they could be like, hey, we're
yeah.
gonna like we already have the whole like Jordan Studios or whatever built out. Like
Do you think it's
Mhm.
more likely? I've heard people flow Apple TV and Netflix for it. I feel like Netflix is more likely than Apple TV, but
yeah, maybe yeah, I don't know.
I
Apple
don't know
TV
if
is always an enigma to me. I feel like they have some of the best content, but it's such confusing content as to what
I
gets
feel.
put on there.
Yeah, I think Apple TV is very thoughtful with what they pick and choose, whereas Netflix is more sure we'll try it in a lot of ways, which makes me think I there's a higher chance on Netflix.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like we've all kind of feel this way that Game of Thrones worked because you had people who loved the story, dedicated to making the story a piece of art work. And then they came out with something of high quality and everyone caught on. And then Game of Thrones became the like, oh, I have HBO for Game of Thrones. Like it became
yeah,
that type of
Yeah.
thing, similar to like
Yeah.
Severance for Apple TV. And if we track that back to the beginning of Wheel of Time, I think you have Rafe who is passionate about this is blasphemy for most of the show hater community. I think Rafe is like passionate about it and wanted to make the best Wheel of Time show he could. But I think Amazon from the get-go was like, we're not greenlighting this project because we believe in like the story
Yeah.
or it like where it's like you said, it's like, okay, here's our chance to do the same, and look, we're gonna throw a bunch of money at it and make us money.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm,
Yeah.
like from the get-go, I think it just and apart from that, it wasn't that make your thing. It's like, okay, how do we like curate this same exact phenomenon over and over with Wheel of Time, Rings of Power, I think. Yeah.
mm.
But
So as we kind of wrap the conversation, is this a, I mean, is this the end of high fantasy TV? This just seems like from, Josh's point there, it seems like this does not bode well for future adaptations
I,
of stories that we love that are these big
I
epic
I
fantasy
don't want to say
stories.
this is the end. Like we still have, the Song of Ice and Fire universe projects that hopefully will keep coming out.
Hmm.
But I do think it is going to make it a lot less likely that we see a first law adaptation, that we see anything from Sanderson anytime soon. Like I think that until kind of these macroeconomic forces start to change a little bit, or
Mm.
technology comes a little bit better, and who knows, like, dude, have you guys seen like the videos that Google showed off at their I/O, like the AI generated videos? Those are freaking insane, man. Like I like
Hmm.
Ben's
Seems like that could,
brother-in-law
yeah,
was showing me some, and like I had no idea. Like it was,
my
and
they
my
so
thoughts
could,
for those is how do you adapt that to a production level thing?
I don't
Because the
know.
costs the
Look, I
costs
don't
don't seem that much cheaper.
the costs are still a lot. I'm just saying
well,
that like
you just have that video as
I
an establishing shot. You build your set that
But I
yeah
mean
doesn't cost as much, and
to create that video, unless you're just pulling from a bunch of stock background, like establishing shots, like you're gonna need someone who knows how to train it. So you're still gonna have some personnel costs, and then right now all the AI companies are eating most of the generative
generative
costs
cost.
just because they're getting their names out there. But once it comes to be like
I
production
was
ready,
yeah
how
mm,
cheap is that going to
Jake.
be
I was
oh,
when they're
mostly
sure.
buying nuclear power plants to power it?
I was mostly just trying to hedge
Yeah,
my bet.
fair.
But like how long if say Google or like OpenAI was to be like, hey, we really want to flex our muscles. Let's go partner with George Abercrombie,
Yeah,
like with Abercrombie or whatever. To be
yeah.
like, hey, we're gonna use we're gonna hire some actors, train our model, and produce like Best Served Cold, and like it's gonna cost a lot of money, but we're gonna stick an OpenAI Studios like logo on it. I'm just
People,
trying to like hedge my bet,
yeah,
saying that like I
yeah.
don't know what the future of
Man,
my fantasy is,
that's
but like
so risky. I could
That's
see
such a can of
this.
worms.
Yeah.
probably not
People
Abercrombie,
on
but like
all sides are going to be misunderstanding and hating it and loving it for
I
different
know.
reasons.
What
And
about
Uh-huh.
like I really don't know anything about John Scalzi, besides I was watching Love, Death and Robots, and I've read one of his books, and he wrote the story for one of them. But like say like a Scalzi who has like a pretty big fan base, but like
Uh-huh.
not isn't like mainstream, probably isn't like super rich, but like is offered just a bag from like OpenAI and be like, hey, let's adapt one of your works. Like what does he has, Abercrombie, I
Hmm.
think
yeah,
I know nothing about Scalzi. Like this is just for like his name popped into my head. But you know what I mean? Like somebody who's like scrounged a
Sure.
living off of like writing is probably doesn't have enough to like have a great retirement. And then OpenAI
Scalzi
goes,
is Scalzi is super offended right now. I think he's
I
okay.
bigger
know.
than you think.
He's bigger than I think.
You're
He's
talking
bigger.
mad trash on the guy's finances right
Yeah.
now.
This guy is freaking
I'm
poor.
just saying,
He's like, "Dear diary, please open
it's
AI.
like
Reach
Social
out to
Security needs
me."
to last for enough. Yeah, I don't know, but you know what I mean. Like,
Scalzi is more successful than
I
you're
think
saying, by the way.
he's more successful. His name was just on mine because I just watched the Love, Death and Robots episode.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like somebody who's like maybe well known enough, but like
Yeah.
could use
I mean, yeah,
$10
right.
million dollars
We're
dropped in their
speculating
lap.
as to
Yeah,
Yeah, very
how could things change?
hypothetical.
How could things change in the future?
yeah.
And AI is obviously at the forefront of what's happening, and like technology could step in here and change things radically. My expectation, you could also, I guess where I'm going with this is you could also just say, let's adapt a new story. Let's have a new thing, like be the new thing that captures everyone's eyeballs, like Game of Thrones was, and then maybe we have another jump off from there. And I think that Romantasy has a chance to do that. And
That's a good point.
if there was a successful adaptation, there's just like so much the popularity behind that genre and behind some of those books is so big that it could be, you know, a I don't want to say Harry Potter level, but it could just be so big and people
Like
are
a 50 Shades level or
sure,
something.
yeah, people are so interested in it and maybe that
Twilight.
catapults, yeah, yeah, Twilight-esque
I
that's
think,
successful. But I don't know that that really helps us out in epic fantasy if romantasy is successful, but I think it could happen.
yeah, I think I don't have great insight into the economics of it, but it does seem like the fantasy TV show era has kind of ended and is it's like breathing its last breaths for the most part. I don't think that necessarily means fantasy movie adaptations are off the books. I think movie and TV are very different, and streaming versus box office is very different as well. So I think there's a chance there. But then bring it back to epic fantasy, like what does that leave us? Like what kind of epic fantasy stories can be adapted into movies in the same way? And I think that presents a harder problem, but
Yeah.
or a different problem.
Yeah. Like Mistborn could be movies, Stormlight Archive. I don't see how they're doing movies.
Yeah.
Unless
That
like our
would be
concept of movies just like totally
yeah.
Or does this
transforms.
push towards animation? Like
Yeah.
there's
Well, that's what I was
animation
kind of
is
thinking.
not super affordable always, but there are ways to,
That's what I was kind of thinking with like the AI. Like if you're like have like a mix between like, some like new interesting medium that gets pushed out
yeah.
due to like I don't know. I should
Unfortunately, the type of animation I really like is like Arcane. I thought that was amazingly done
Yeah.
writing and animation, but that was a net loss intentionally by Riot Games to just advertise League of Legends basically. So
but like
like
Blue Eye
that's like a
Samurai,
one in a million. Blue Eye
like Blue Eye
Samurai is
Samurai.
great. Yeah, Blue Eye
Yeah.
Samurai is great. I really like that. I wonder what the like the ROI on that has been.
Yeah. Hmm.
I really like Blue Eye Samurai. Yeah, that could be Stormlight in that style. That could be really cool.
I would be disappointed if the Stormlight adaptation we got was an animation.
Would you?
Well, I don't because it doesn't
Like
necessarily
I don't dislike
preclude.
animation. I like some animation and yeah, I guess Josh, if you're saying that maybe they could make a live action in the future because it seems like a lot of people like making live action versions of stories that already exist. So
Well,
maybe,
like,
but I don't know. If you're telling me like Stormlight's got one chance and it's animated or nothing, like I'm gonna be sad. There's gonna be some
Really?
sadness there. Yeah.
I would be totally satisfied with a Blue Eye Samurai quality Stormlight
oh yeah,
adaptation.
I would
I
too.
would love it.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you got a Lord of the Rings was animated before, it had its live
I'm
action.
not sure if you want to make those comparisons.
Dude, I love that. I loved that when I was a kid.
They
Yeah,
weren't great.
there were a lot of things that I loved as a kid, and looking back,
Hey,
I realize they're not actually that good.
oh man.
All right, tune in. Let us know on chat and comments what we got wrong in all of this. A lot of speculation. None of us are TV experts by any means. So if you feel like we're off base in any way, just let us know. And if you want to chat with us more, you can join our Discord. Invites are on the episode description below. And I don't know, like Twitter of Time, Wheel of Time fans, I guess we're just hoping that somehow it gets picked up. Seems, I don't know. The takeaway from our conversation is it seems unlikely.
Yep.
I'm
If you had like a
I'm
magic eight
more
ball.
hopeful. I don't think it's I think it's just slightly under 50-50. That's where I'm at right now.
Really? I put it at like 10%.
Yeah.
I'm more Steven's 10% range.
Unless they can like repitch it and say we're gonna do this way cheaper somehow.
I'm reading into that thing Sony posted. I'm reading into it as them looking for ways to continue
Yeah,
it.
Jake with all this
Uh,
copium after trashing the show.
I don't know, hopium for sure. I don't know about copium. I'm not coping over the show, like the show.
Don't start on this again, Jake.
What?
The cope definition argument from 3 years
all
ago.
right.
3
Thanks,
years
guys.
ago.
We'll see you later.
See ya.